Creepy science experiments come in all shapes and sizes, like large and round. Some psychological experiments are creepy because they tell us something disturbing about ourselves. However, other experiments are creepy because they're just wrong. Quite often, human experiments have been excessively brutal and violent. So be warned, the word creepy may be an understatement for some of the experiments on this list. Nonetheless, I'm Mike with List 25, and these are the 25 incredibly disturbing science experiments in history. 25. Neuromarketing experiments. Basically, the field of neuromarketing involves studying the brains of subjects and creating advertisements or marketing that are biologically guaranteed to work. Sound creepy? Well, everybody's doing it. Every company, from Google to Frito-Lay, invests in this type of research. As a note, there is still some debate as to its effectiveness. 24. The UCLA schizophrenia study. When researchers took schizophrenic patients off of their regular medications, they were instructed to put them right back if their symptoms significantly worsened. Apparently, the term significantly is rather subjective. One patient threatened to kill his parents, and another jumped off a building. 23. The eye color experiment. After the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., a school teacher named Jane Elliott decided to teach her students about discrimination. She divided them into two groups, blue eyes and brown eyes. She told the class that blue-eyed students were superior and sat the brown-eyed children in the back. The blue-eyed group got all-around preferential treatment, more food at lunch, more playtime, etc. Although it isn't too surprising today, back then the results of this experiment were surprising. The brown-eyed kids actually started performing worse in school. It was a self-fulfilling prophecy. 22. The Three Christs of Ypsilanti. Milton Rokeach performed a study where he brought together 3 psychiatric patients, all who claimed to be God. At first, the men argued about who was holier and almost beat each other up. But after a while, each of them accepted that the other 2 were just crazy. 21. Chimera. Meaning chamber in Russian, this was an infamous Soviet research facility that subjected people to highly poisonous substances. Witnesses have described the effects of vicious poisons such as K2. Victims would actually physically shrink and then die after a few minutes. The crazy part? K2 is completely undetectable. And even crazier, the Chimera was allegedly reopened in the 90s. 20. North Korea. The English language fails us as the word creepy seems to fall unfathomably far from sufficiency. The North Korean government is known for some insanely inhuman experiments, including surgery without anesthesia and suffocation in gas chambers. In fact, one person testified before U.S. Congress that he witnessed a family of 4, parents, son, and daughter, suffocate to death in a chamber. The parents apparently tried to perform mouth-to-mouth resuscitation on their children for as long as they could. 19. Project MKUltra. The aim of this CIA experiment was to see if mind control could be weaponized. How did they go about doing this? By injecting prostitutes with LSD. I'm not kidding. 18. Tuskegee Syphilis Study. Best described as infuriating, the government basically told a bunch of African American males with syphilis that they would be receiving free healthcare for life. Instead, they weren't given any treatment, but were rather monitored over the course of their lifetime. The study was eventually ended thanks to a whistleblower. 17. Pavlov's orphan experiments. We all know how Pavlov conditioned dogs to salivate at the sound of a bell. Well, Pavlov did the same thing with orphans. The problem with orphans, however, is that they are less agreeable, so he strapped them down and force-fed them. That's the beginning of a sentence I thought I'd never say. The problem with orphans. 16. Free will. Brain imaging experiments performed by Benjamin Libet showed that all of our decisions are preceded by subconscious factors in the brain that affect the outcome of our decision. Although still controversial, there is something a bit creepy about not having free will. This would mean that everything you do has already been predetermined.
Let Will go.
Free Willy?
Free will. Oh! 15.
Mengele's twin studies. Dr. Mengele is the definition of an evil scientist. A Nazi researcher, he had a thing for twins. Why? Because he could perform all sorts of crazy experiments on one while using the other as a control.
14.
Precognition. In 2010, social psychologist Daryl Bem published a study in which he claimed to show that people's choices were affected by events in the future. He followed the classic priming approach, where a subject is conditioned to choose a certain response. The interesting part? He included his primers, or conditioning factors, after the participants had made their choice. According to a study, the participants' choices were affected by the primers that followed them. As a note, as crazy as these results are, there is still controversy surrounding the methods.
13.
Lost in the Mall. In the 90s, psychologists Elizabeth Loftus, James Cone, and Jacqueline Pickrell successfully implanted fake memories into the minds of participants by talking about the fake memories in between true memories. Their memories of choice were being lost in the mall and meeting Bugs Bunny at Disneyland. Although having fake memories implanted is somewhat creepy, this research has sent massive waves through the psychology community. It casts serious doubt on human memory and eyewitness testimony. In fact, other research has shown that our memories are notoriously unreliable. And to really creep you out, the majority of what you remember is wrong to some extent. Furthermore, every time you access a memory, it becomes even more corrupted. Like copying a copy on a copy machine. The more you do it, the crappier it gets.
12.
Nazi freezing experiments. Yet again, the word creepy just doesn't do justice to the situation. A lot of what we know about conditions like hypothermia is actually because of highly unethical Nazi medical experiments. The Nazi researchers dunked prisoners in freezing water for various lengths of time. They also left them outside in the freezing cold and tried rewarming them, many times in very inhumane ways.
11.
David Reimer. Born in Canada, David and his twin were recommended for circumcisions due to urinary problems. Although his brother Brian had a successful operation, David's was botched. After consulting with doctors, the parents decided to raise David as a girl since his genitalia was so damaged. He received hormone injections and therapy sessions. Until the age of 14, David thought he was a girl named Brenda. The crazy part here is that the psychologist responsible for this advice, John Money, only wanted to use David as an experiment to prove that gender is due to nurture and not nature. He never told his parents the true intentions. David never quite felt like a girl, and at 14 his parents told him the truth. He immediately went back to being male. He took the name David, received injections of testosterone, a mastectomy, and a phalloplasty. Unfortunately, the ordeal ruined David and his family. His relationship with his parents was strained, his brother was depressed, and David eventually committed suicide.
10.
Pit of despair. Harry Harlow wasn't exactly known for his empathy. This researcher basically gave birth to the animal rights movement in response to his crazy experiments. He separated baby monkeys from their mothers and kept them in isolation for up to a year. Many of the monkeys went crazy and never recovered.
9.
The facial expressions experiment. In 1924, a psychology student named Carney Landis performed a crazy experiment at the University of Minnesota. He basically painted lines on the faces of the participants in order to record their facial expressions in reaction to various stimuli, smelling ammonia, looking at various images, etc. The final bit, however, was where the insanity began. He gave the participants a rat and asked them to behead it. Although nobody liked the idea, a third of the participants actually did it. For the other 2/3, he picked up the knife and did it himself.
8.
Monkey drug trials. Conducted in 1969 by Danu, Yanagita, and Sievers, the researchers basically gave drugs to monkeys, everything from cocaine to alcohol. Although you may have expected the monkeys to go a little crazy, they went absolutely insane. Some of them tore off their own fingers or ripped out all of their hair.
7.
The Aversion Project. Once again, creepy is too light of a term here, but during the 70s and 80s, the military in South Africa tried to convert gay recruits by castration and other methods. The psychiatrist who oversaw the experiments, Dr. Aubrey Levin, then moved to Canada where he practiced until recently. He was convicted for sexual abuse.
6.
The monster study. In 1939, Wendell Johnson performed this experiment at the University of Iowa. He basically separated orphans into two groups. He gave positive speech therapy to half the children, praising their fluency, and negative speech therapy to the other half, telling them they stuttered, couldn't speak well, etc. The orphans in the negative group developed self-esteem problems that lasted into adulthood. In fact, some of them even developed actual problems with their speech. This experiment was labeled the monster experiment because his colleagues couldn't believe that Johnson would experiment on orphans like this.
5.
Little Albert. In the 1920s, researchers at Johns Hopkins introduced furry animals to an infant named Albert. He seemed to be curious and enjoyed playing with them. Then, the researchers conditioned Albert to dislike the animals by loudly striking hammers whenever they appeared. Unfortunately, little Albert died of unrelated causes when he was only 6, but he never did enjoy furry animals again in his short lifetime.
4.
The bystander effect. In the 1960s, researchers at Columbia University conducted experiments to better understand why a group of people was less likely to help someone in distress than an individual. They placed participants in a room and gradually filled it with smoke. Sure enough, when there was only one person in the room, they reported the smoke almost immediately. When there were more than one, it took a while. This is because each person assumes that somebody else will do something or that everything is okay because nobody else is doing anything.
3.
Stanford Prison Experiment. Another famously unethical experiment, in 1971, Philip Zimbardo performed an experiment where half the participants were guards and the other half were prisoners. After just a few days, the guards had turned into the sadistic abusers, and the prisoners had all become depressed.
2.
Unit 731. I've said it before, but creepy is a massively insufficient adjective to describe what happened here. Prisoners of war at this covert Japanese research facility were experimented on in unthinkable ways. They were blown up, cut to pieces, frozen, and used to test weapons.
1.
The Milgram experiment. Psychologist Stanley Milgram wanted to know how so many people could have been complicit with Nazi Germany in the Holocaust. He conducted experiments where an official would instruct participants to administer electric shocks to a person, an actor, in another room by pressing a button. The shocks increased in power, as did the screams, until the screams ceased. In fact, had the shocks been real, almost every participant would have killed the actor. And to make it worse, the actors often pleaded for the shocks to stop. This study is famous for showing that, given the right circumstances, we are all capable of unspeakable atrocities. Nothing.
No?
No!
No.
Not really on any of these. Here you go.
Hold on. So, what's an unethical experiment you'd like to perform?
Oh my
Let us
God.
know in the comments below, or tweet your answer to us at list25.
No, don't. That's
No?
a terrible idea.
Is that too far?
That's probably no, they'll take it too far.
They will take it too far.
Oh my God.
Huh. Should I keep this in?
No,
No?
it's a terrible idea.
Okay, fine.
Enjoying our lists? Be sure to click that subscribe button on the bottom right and the notification bell so you don't miss out on new ones every Monday through Friday. Share them with friends and help us consistently conciliate curiosity. And if you want even more lists, check out these videos here or just head to our website at list25.com.